Hey y'all, just a quick clip here. August 3rd, Chris and Maverick are gone on home. Richard was here working on his car. I'm going to try to keep this quick. He had new wheels and tires, putting his new brake system on. Chris traded him with this cart. There was a bunch of old rotary valve motors, and Chris traded him. Actually, he gave me this engine for free, so because he gave us this one, he gave us this one, an HPV, ready to go. 2 pipes, a G4, and a Delta 4 with that. And Rich gave him a K88, a Comet, complete, new piston in it, never been started since rebuilt. It was rebuilt probably 30 years ago. It came with Cuzin Mikes Kart. There was another Comet bottom end, I think a cylinder and a head. No crank to be found, bunch of parts pieces. There was 2 DAPs, 2 of these T80 DAPs. The one, I'm not sure if I ever showed you, all the fins from here back were missing, were gone, were broken off and gone. I think that engine was stuck, slightly stuck on the back side. I don't think any of that stuff had motoplats on them. And no carburetors. They're all on big, single big intakes. But this here, I was looking at this thing and I called it right off the bat. Sorry about the camera. Back in the day, I had an honest-to-God Ardelt. I had an Ardelt engine. Had the Culver carburetor on it. I bought it from Pops Basher, the guy I bought my first go-kart from. It's a 100cc engine. It's an alcohol motor. I ran on gas for a while on a big 34 millimeter gas carb. And then I eventually went to the Culvinator and ran alcohol. And back in those days, WK made me run B Limited with that. Although it was legal for open, according to the rules said no limitation to modification except overbore. Well, it was a 100cc engine, but they claimed because it was water cooled that I had to run B Limited with it. And I tried to explain to them, even being water cooled, the Ardelt was an old engine. This is an old K88 bottom end, right? With the cylinder, the water cooled cylinder and head on it. I tried to explain to them that I had no advantage. As a matter of fact, that the newer model Reed open motors were going to blow my doors off anyway. I just wanted to be able to run in the class it was designed for. So, long story short, they made me run B Limited. After a year or 2 of running it, I bumped into Greg Cambell, Lord rest his soul. He raced against my dad, raced with my dad, raced with a lot of the CKS clone guys, Wild Bill, Cram, and G-Man, Bill Groth, and all the guys that wore the CKS t-shirts. We called them the clones because they were all CKS clones. Long story short, Campbell talked me into letting him modify my Ardelt. They told him, they were making me run B Limited with it. So what he did is he took the jug, he took the whole motor back to New York with him, and he pushed the 100cc liner out, and he pushed a BM 130 liner into it, and then ported the barrel, the jug itself, right? And we ran it on alcohol, and he was I think he was making, I don't know if he was making the pistons or what the deal was, but we had some teething problems, man. The liner was so thin, maybe he bored the 100cc liner, I don't know, but the metal was so thin, it didn't take much. If it got just a little too hot, the engine would stick. And that always kind of stuck with me, and I ended up eventually pushing that 135 liner out of there and putting a 100cc liner back in it, running it a little bit just to make sure it ran, and then I ended up doing what I totally regret, and I sold that engine off. Here, looking at all the, why do I bring all this up? Because I want to show you this DAP engine. Right off, it looks like it's got a Comet intake on it because the bolt holes don't jive, right? Or maybe that is a Comet bottom end, is what it looks like. It's not a DAP bottom end. That looks like a K78 bottom end with these bulbous mounting hole deals. It's got a crazy, the ignition cover's been cut. It's got the mini shaft on it with the motoplat. And I was looking at this thing, and you know, Richard and Kenny said, hey, look at this. It's got some markings on the front of it. I hope you can see this. It says hub on there, and then there's a 1 on one side and 1 on the other, obviously, to make sure you're matching everything up. But I was rotating this thing around, looking at it, and I said, you know what? This thing, there's just something about this that reminded me of that Ardelt of mine back in the day. I said, you know what? This looks like a Greg Cambell engine. And Richard said, what do you mean? And then I reminded him about the bore job where Greg opened up that 100cc motor to a 135. And Kenny, my brother Kenny, was here too, and they said, listen, we popped the head off this, and you're not going to believe what we saw. So I've already got the nuts and bolts removed. Folks, this has not a 50.8 or 50.9, that says 56.4. That's a B-bomb piston in a little 100cc engine. And guess what? Then we looked and we saw this. Right here. I don't know if you can see that. GC94. GC. Greg Cambell. Greg Cambell. He also put his initials right here. Let me clean that up for you real quick. GC94. So this is a Cambell modified engine. Look at that! Look at the head work he had to do to get this big piston in this thing. It's all fresh and new. I don't know that it's been run since being opened up. Trying to find the holes. Need a little hair around that hole. There we go. So, thank God Richard didn't get rid of this one. He gave Chris all the K88 Comet stuff in exchange for these two engines these two piston port engines he's got. And he gave him the DAP with the fins busted off. I mean, it's a lot of blown up stuff, right? I mean, a lot of broke down stuff. But boy, am I sure glad he didn't get rid of this. He asked me, he said, well, what do you think it's worth? You know, and I said, worth? This could go on the shelf right here. This is a Cambell engine, man. I don't have my Ardelt. This is all we've got left of old Greg Cambell, man. We're going to hang on to this. We're going to hang on to this one. He's also got a Hewland Darrow that's completely fresh, rebuilt, never run. And that was probably rebuilt 30 years ago, too. So that's all he's got left. He gave Chris the Slippy pipes and everything. I mean, Chris gave us a good deal. Listen, he handed me a motor and asked me for nothing. I think over time, I probably gave him either a deal or some free track time. But it was still something he didn't need to do. He gave us the Delta 3 pipe that's on here. And he's not going to run the HPV. He bought that from Comet Kart Sales. I know what he paid for it. I know the issues that he had with it, with getting a gear to fit on the taper of the crank that matches no other motor. We know what's going on with that, but I guess they ran it they got it to run, they ran it at Mid-Ohio, and I think the nut for the gear came off, and they lost the gear, so they had no drive, and his brother was done running it. But amazing, amazing find here. An original Greg Cambell big bore short stroke motor. Pretty cool stuff. You got a Greg Cambell story, share it. I can tell you some stories about when I was a little kid, but this video will be too long. Watkins Glen. He blew up so hard, he blew everything out of the center. This thing was gone. I was looking down from the grandstand above into the pit lane, and you could see right down inside the engine. He sent the piston right out of that sucker. That's when I knew, I don't know who that guy is, but he's fast. I better pay attention to that dude. 15, 20 years later, he ends up doing a motor for me. And another 30 years later, here we are. We got one of these bad boys to hang on to. So, just wanted to share that little story with you. We got a big bore, short stroke engine. 56.4. Crazy, man.